Hi, everybody, and welcome back to Chee-Tash. My name is Chris, and today we're continuing on with 1984. Almost done with 1984. We are on Chapter 3, Part 3, talking a little bit more about the interrogation that is taking place between O'Brien and Winston, in that O'Brien is interrogating Winston. And where we left off, the last mentions when we left off was Winston and O'Brien talking about room 101. We've discovered that he's in the Ministry of Love, and it is not a place of love like maybe you and I would kind of think of love. It seems really like a place of rehabilitation, and that seems like what's going on between Winston and O'Brien. Like O'Brien is the doctor trying to give therapy to Winston to bring him back to the part on the level of the party. And we're just going to continue on with that here in part 3. Let's just go ahead, jump right into the first slide here, where O'Brien introduces these 3 stages in his reintegration into the party. And the first stage is learning, second stage understanding, and the third stage is acceptance. And O'Brien reveals that Winston is in the learning stage, but they are about to enter the understanding stage. And understanding in this regards that the question that they are going to be asking is why the party does what they do. And if you guys remember, while reading Goldstein's book back in Chapter 2, at the end of Chapter 2, Winston asks himself this question after reading one of the chapters. Like, he understands the how, like the how the party is doing what they're doing and all their tactics. But now he's trying to get to the why. And just as soon as he's about to get to that why, he stops reading. Then this is when the thought police bust in. They have him surrounded and they arrest him. But now him and O'Brien are going to kind of talk about the why. And this also starts on right around page 270, where O'Brien actually brings up this fact. He asks Winston, "Oh, don't you remember reading this portion in Goldstein's book? Don't you remember writing in your diary about, I understand the how, but I do not understand the why?" And Winston gets kind of surprised, and he's like, "Oh, have you read Goldstein's book?" Which is kind of a weird question because he gets Goldstein's book from O'Brien anyway. So wouldn't you think he kind of wrote it or read it? But actually, in fact, O'Brien reveals that he wrote it. Now, understand the perspective if you think O'Brien is a part of the Brotherhood, helped write it. That's different than now you find out O'Brien is just a higher member of the party and he's on the other side. And this kind of just goes with the narrative that we found out last time, where Winston's asking about, hey, is Big Brother real? Is the Brotherhood real? And I don't think it was. And just right here, we have confirmation. It's not real. That's all manufactured by the party. O'Brien's claiming it himself right here. He wrote Goldstein's book in collaboration with other people. Why would they do that? Why would they just have Winston read all this stuff? Because O'Brien says, and Winston asks him, is it true what it says? And O'Brien says, as a description, yes. Why would they just willingly let Winston read all this stuff if they realize what it could do to a person? But ultimately, they let him read it because it doesn't matter if he reads it, because he can't put any of the principles in there to use. And O'Brien actually says the program it sets forth is nonsense. The secret accumulation of knowledge, a gradual spread of enlightenment, ultimately a proletariat rebellion, the overthrow of a party. That's kind of what the book was describing. And it's never going to happen. So it doesn't matter if you read it. On page 272, Winston starts to get some sort of an answer going as to why the party does what they do. So he starts to say, oh, you are ruling over us for our own good. You believe that human beings are not fit to govern themselves, and therefore, this is where O'Brien gets a little upset, and he gives O'Brien a shock from that dial that we saw in the last part. And he tells Winston, what a stupid answer. You should know better than to say something like that. And O'Brien is going to educate him a little bit here. And he says, the party seeks power entirely for its own sake. We are not interested in the good of others. We are interested solely in power. And he says something powerful here. Power is not a means. It is an end. So you don't use power to get to something. Power is the ultimate end goal, and you don't relinquish it. This is where he says others in the past have gotten it wrong. Like he says the German Nazis or the Russian communists who came very close. But then they seized power, and they thought that just around the corner there lay a paradise where human beings would be free and equal. We know that no one ever seizes power with the intention of relinquishing it. So that's the ultimate difference there is the party in Oceania, they have the power. They're never giving it up because they know that there is never a paradise where everybody's going to coexist equally. We continue on page 273, where O'Brien mentions how power is a collective thing. It's never just in one person. And think about how this relates to what was mentioned about the party and how the party persists throughout history, is that it's not concerned about bloodlines like kings and queens, monarchies and such. It's just concerned with the idea propagating through everybody's mind, no matter who you are, no matter where you come from proletariat to inner party member. So it's a group thing. And as an individual, you don't have as much of a power. And he uses this example of, hey, if you cut off your fingernail, does your body die? The weariness of a cell is the vigor of the organism. Just because one part of, cells are coming and going doesn't mean that, you're still alive. An individual is strong if he merges with the party. Then it's all powerful, but alone, he says, alone, free, the human being is always defeated. It must be so because every human being is doomed to die, which is the greatest of all failures. But if he merges with the party, he's all-powerful and immortal because the party never dies. The party has been and always will be. Winston asks questions, and there is this kind of dialogue back and forth. O'Brien says something. Winston kind of asks more questions and pushes back because O'Brien mentions that already we have power over matter, external reality, and our control over matter is absolute. And Winston asks, but how can you control matter? You don't even control the climate, the gravity. You don't control the laws of physics and science. But O'Brien shuts him up and says, we control matter because we control the mind. And reality stems from the mind. So because we control the people's minds of Oceania, we make the laws of nature. They are what we say they are. And Winston kind of pushes back, but you're not even masters of a planet. What about Eurasia, East Asia? And he's like, unimportant. The only world that people know in Oceania is Oceania. And he says, well, what about the universe? And he's like, O'Brien says, nothing exists except through human consciousness. And again, they control what's in the mind. They'll be able to control what you think. The stars, the planets, none of that is going to matter. O'Brien says, what are the stars? They are bits of fire a few kilometers away. It's basically doublethink happening. Admitting one thing and then ignoring it at the same time. The ultimate goal here, let me go to page 276 here. The ultimate goal here is to make people suffer. That's how one asserts power. That's how Oceania is asserting power. Obedience is not enough unless he is suffering. How can you be sure that he is obeying your will and not his own? Power is in inflicting pain and humiliation. Progress in our world will be progress towards more pain. The world of Oceania is founded on hatred. So fear is driving this whole thing in Oceania. Fear that you're going to get caught by another party member, by Big Brother. Remember, Big Brother's always watching. You're always on your toes. And that's the goal of Oceania. That's how they assert power over everybody. And O'Brien mentions that the future is, imagine a boot stamping on a human face forever. It will never end. And remember that it is forever, says O'Brien. The face will always be there to be stamped on. The heretic, the enemy of society, will always be there. And it's revealed here, Winston's whole drama, this whole kind of story of 1984 takes place over this 7-year period. And he tells Winston, and I ask you guys this question too, this drama that I have played out with you during 7 years will be played out over and over again, generation after generation, always in subtler forms. So has Winston been in this position before? Think about the dreams that Winston has had. In the dreams where he remembers certain things, and it's almost like his dreams are foreshadowing certain things. So like the meeting with O'Brien, like meeting Julia out in the field, dreams of his mother and family in the past. How much of those dreams were things that already happened to Winston? Because he's constantly being rehabilitated at the Ministry of Love. He's taught to understand, what were the three? I forget the three things already. Learning, understanding, acceptance. He goes through those 3 stages continuously. He gets put back out into the world, a rehabbed new member of the party, and then he slowly relapses back to a revolutionary mindset. And then he's got to stop back in the Ministry of Love again. So how many times has this played out, you think? It's crazy to think about. Let's continue forward. Goldstein. Oh, yeah, Goldstein is mentioned. Because O'Brien says, the more the party is powerful, the less it will be tolerant, the weaker the opposition, the tighter the despotism. Goldstein and his heresies will live forever. Every day they will be defeated, and yet they will always survive, because I think that's the plan of the party. They always need that opposition force to survive in order to have somebody to stomp on. The 2 minutes of hate. They need somebody in the 2 minutes of hate to spit on, to yell at. So that's why Goldstein is going to continue on forever. And as we found out in the last chapter, that whole Goldstein racket was made up. And O'Brien even mentions it here. They wrote that book. They wrote that book to create an opposition, to maybe bait people into reading it, to see who the real people are that believed in the party and the people who were kind of hesitant. And then bring those people that were kind of hesitant to the Ministry of Love so they can be rehabbed. Page 278, Winston starts to push back a little bit now. He's like, you can't do all this. It's impossible to found a civilization on fear and hatred. It will never endure. Hatred is not more exhausting than fear, says O'Brien. And again, individuals die, but the party is immortal. And again, the party creates human nature. The death of the individual does not mean the death of the party. And Winston just pushes back, you're going to fail. Life is going to defeat you. There's going to be something. And O'Brien just shuts everything down. We control life, says O'Brien. Men are malleable. The proles will never rise up. They are helpless. They are like animals. And Winston just doesn't believe it. He says, no, you're going to be defeated by something, by the spirit of man, perhaps. And O'Brien calls him out and says, do you consider yourself a man? And Winston says, yes. O'Brien says, well, then you are the last man. You are alone. And as a man, do you consider yourself morally superior? And Winston says, yes, I do. I am morally superior. I don't believe in all this stuff that the party is spewing. Well, next thing you know, O'Brien plays Winston a tape, a recording of him back at O'Brien's house, where he's supposedly joining the Brotherhood in the fight against Big Brother. And he plays him back the tape of all the things that Winston said that he would do to overthrow Big Brother. And remember all the things: lie, steal, forge, murder, encourage drug taking, prostitution, disseminate venereal disease. He plays this to Winston to make him remember he is no better, because he would do the same things that the party would do. He is not morally superior. So he completely shuts down Winston in that regard, and he makes him get up off the bed. And he says, you know what? If you're a man, you need to see yourself for what you really are. And this is on page 280. He makes Winston take off his clothes and go to a tri-sided mirror. And Winston goes to the mirror, and he is horrified at what he sees. Gray-colored, skeleton-like being in the mirror. There's a good description in the book. These are just some of the, most important descriptions that I pulled out, but bald scalp, hair was falling out, crooked nose, jailbird face. He's emaciated, super, super skinny. O'Brien says he's lost like 20, 25 kilograms, while here, the varicose ulcer is all out of whack. It's all inflamed, and he's just a gray alien-looking thing. And to think that Winston has thoughts while he's here in the Ministry of Love that, wow, O'Brien looks so much different. He's mentioned it a few times in Chapter 3 where O'Brien looked way different than when he saw him at his house back in Chapter 2. He looks way older within the walls of the Ministry of Love, like his true colors have shown. But look at Winston. And O'Brien kind of calls him out for this. You thought that I looked old. But what do you think about your own face? And O'Brien uses this to kind of tell Winston, so you're a man. You think the spirit of man will defeat us. You think that you're morally superior, but you said all these nasty things that you would do. And you say that men are going to band together, but men like you? Because you look terrible. You're not going to overthrow anybody in this state. You're rotting away. And now it's time to put Humpty Dumpty back together again, basically. And it seems like by going through those 3 stages of reintegration, Winston is going to go from the skeleton-like figure back to his original self. Winston is horrified at seeing this. He blames O'Brien for the way he looks, and O'Brien just pushes back on Winston and says, nope, you did this to yourself. You set yourself up against the party when you bought that diary and started writing in it. started meeting Julia, started asking questions about Goldstein. You rented out that room. You're doing things totally against the party, denouncing it and such. You did this to yourself. And then the party came in and beat you down to a pulp. And when O'Brien asked Winston, can you think of a single degradation that has not happened to you? And Winston says, I have not betrayed Julia. He gave up certain aspects about the relationship. So, in fact, okay, I'm sorry. He does say, how intelligent, never did O'Brien fail to understand what was said to him. Anyone else on earth would have answered promptly that he had betrayed Julia. For what was there that they had not screwed out of him under the torture? He had told them everything he knew about her, habits, character, past life, confessed in almost every trivial detail. And yet, in the sense in which he intended the word, he had not betrayed her. He had not stopped loving her. Okay, so so I was kind of partly right on that bullet point. He gives up certain things about the relationship, but he never stops loving her. If you guys remember, Winston and Julia have this conversation, I think back in chapter 2, where they said, oh, but real betrayal is stopping loving one another. But it does kind of seem like earlier in chapter 3, he does kind of stop caring about Julia, and he doesn't really think about her too much anymore. But that's what he tells Winston, or O'Brien. And then the final question that Winston asks O'Brien is, tell me, how soon will they shoot me? And O'Brien replies, it might be a long time. You are a difficult case, but don't give up hope. Everything is cured sooner or later, and then in the end, we shall shoot you. Guys, that's going to do it for Chapter 3, Part 3. Tune in next time. We're going to do Chapter 3, Part 4. We are oh so close to being done with the book. We've only got about 25 pages left. So I think just 2 more episodes. I'm not going to do a blog post for this episode. I've been kind of busy. I know I've been trying to do 2 episodes a week for 1984, but got a little busy here, so I'll only do this one for this week. Next week we'll have Chapter 3, Part 4, and we're getting close, and then I'll probably make another new book announcement. Thank you guys so much for listening this far. I really, really appreciate it, and my name is Chris. This has been Chee-Tash. Take care.